Hello and welcome back to another episode of Out of Bound. This is episode 10. Today we have a very special guest. Before I get into that, let's get into this intro, shall we? Again, welcome back. I'm Danell Leyva. This is episode 10. Today is a very special guest episode. Her name is Cami Craig. Now, we were filming it through a Zoom call, right? Like you can record the call. It doesn't matter. You guys know all this stuff. Here's the problem. Sometimes technology decides to mess with you, right? And it decided to mess with me. Now, fortunately, we have 98% of the entire conversation that Cami and I had. But the very beginning, just the introduction, got lost. So I will introduce her for you. On our episode today, we have the amazing, the wonderful Cami Craig. She is a three-time Olympian and a three-time Olympic medalist, where she won a silver in Beijing and a gold in London and in Rio. She's amazing. She is absolutely phenomenal. Of course, she was a phenomenal athlete. She is an even more phenomenal human being. And I think you guys will absolutely be able to pick up on that. When it cut off, we were speaking about just how uncomfortable everything has kind of been for everybody right now, and the state of the world and this year and just everything. And we were talking about how, as an athlete, it's essentially our job to constantly put ourselves in an uncomfortable situation so that when we do actually get to the Olympics, we feel incredibly at home. This episode might actually be a lot longer than just like 35 minutes. We had a very nice, very long conversation, but I hope you enjoy it. Without further ado, let's get to that. It wasn't even an interview. It was just kind of a chat. It was a conversation. So let's get to that. Let's put that on. Ready? And yeah, I agree with you. I think that it was definitely a big part of our job to understand that sometimes in the most uncomfortable positions, we need to thrive. We need to just know how to be better than what we thought we could.
And really focusing on what we have control over and what we don't have control over.
Yes.
We don't have a lot of energy, focus, or time to give away when you're training at that highest level.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
so why add on to the fight or the weight or
Yeah.
the discomfort? So it's like that stuff gets put up on the shelf, or you just let it go altogether because you don't have the space to carry it. And so yeah.
Yes, Cami. Here's the thing that I want to tell the audience. Cami is a phenomenal human being, not just because she had an amazing career as an athlete. By the way, Cami Craig, two-time Olympic gold medalist for water polo for the United States. That's why I'm wearing my...
I love it. A family, Team USA.
Yep, exactly.
Also, the silver medal. Everyone likes to overlook the silver medal, but it's like...
Sorry, that's right, because that was always my thing. Like, I feel like you did go to 3, and you did. You got a silver medal, so 3 Olympics in total, which just that by itself is like, phew. But not just that. Hey, we're going to get a silver the first time. And you know what? Not super happy with that. So let me get 2 gold medals back to back to make up for it.
Exactly. It changed everything moving forward, right? After winning a silver, it's like, that's a hard way to end, because you lose your final game. And so that changed everything moving forward of how we train.
So, that's so interesting because like our sports are so vastly different that for you to get a silver medal, it really is losing. Like it really is just like, but like for a gymnast to get silver medal, it's still just like, hey, that was really good because like, because it's such a subjective sport. It's so like based off of another person's opinion. Whereas for you guys, it's just like, no, like we made more goals or whatever it was.
Yes. You guys are literally landing on a win of a silver, or landing on a win of a
Yeah.
bronze, or landing on one of a gold, and we are
Right.
literally our last game was a loss. Like, we lost in the last
Yeah.
20 seconds of
Oh.
the 2008 Beijing games, and it was like, to have to swim across the pool and pull myself out and look at my teammates in the eyes after that.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Receiving that silver medal is not as fun as when, like, I received the silver medal. Like, you were just like, "Take it off of me."
I
And
mean,
for
it
me,
took
I'm
some
like,
time to like appreciate what I had just experienced, what our team just experienced, and
Mhm.
coming home with an Olympic medal altogether is a pretty incredible accomplishment. But it was an interesting relationship for a while before I could really own it, accept it,
Yeah.
acknowledge what we had experienced, and then it was just kind of like this warpath to like get out of my way, get out of our way, right? Like, no one's gonna make us feel this way ever again.
You know,
So
it's really interesting for me. I think we spoke a little bit about like your how your coaching was and stuff like that. Like you had a relatively good relationship with like your coach, right?
right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Uh, for me, not so much. 3 years later, 3.5 years later, I started going to therapy, and there was one point that I was talking to my therapist, and I said the words, "I just got a silver medal at the Olympics," and she literally stopped me, and she was like, "What did you just say?" She
Mhm.
was so upset at me because I was like, "Yeah, I just got a silver medal." But that's something that, like, especially as a fellow Olympic athlete, you understand, like, "Ah, man," you know what I mean? But anybody else, we try and say that to, they'll be like, "Shut up, man, shut up," you know?
Yes. There's
But
a few things that come to mind when you're saying that. I think one, being fellow Olympians, being on the same team, Team USA, like there is a shared experience. There's a bond that we share, even though we're two different sports, obviously,
yeah,
have two different experiences, but we walk the same path. There's like a knowing. And so there's like an automatic, like, kind of connection and trust of like,
mhm,
I understand what you've gone through. Like,
mhm,
I understand kind of the thoughts that you're thinking and the path you've walked and the experience that you've experienced. And so, you know, the fact that you said that to your therapist and it was like, like, obviously I can honor what you've done and really respect all the work that you've put in, and you can
yeah.
do the same for me. But I also know, I know you're
We
right.
understand, yeah, because we
Yeah.
understand for sure, and that here and you made me think of something, of a question. It's not really related, but it's somewhat related. For me, in retrospect, I realized that what the Olympic experience was for me was the village. Like, because
Mhm.
the competitions, they're all the same. They're all
Right.
the same. They all bleed into each other. Yeah, the crowds are bigger. You have different banners here and there. You
Yeah.
actually see the Olympic rings here and there. But being in the village for me, that's the Olympics for me.
That's what made it feel like an Olympic experience for you.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, it's an interesting way because, like, when I was training, I constantly was kind of showing up to practice and trying to put the same pressure of the
Yeah.
Olympics on the practice,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
like, we would be scrimmaging internally, like our squad, like the 16
Mhm.
girls who were training, we would scrimmage against each other. And we're at our like pool where there's no one around. If the world got
Mhm.
blown up, everyone would be like, wait, where did the women's US
Yeah.
water polo team
Right.
train? We don't know. So there is like the energy you have to create for yourself,
Yeah.
and the pressure you have to create for yourself,
Yeah.
and the environment that you're creating. You don't want to go to the Olympics feeling like, we're at the Olympic Games, change everything, this is
Yes.
like so weird,
Yes.
this is so new, it's like, you want it to feel like, I've been here, I've done this feels really familiar,
Mhm.
and it's another pool with the opponents we already know super well,
Yeah.
and we're going to go get the job done. And
Yeah.
so there's this kind of like, you normalize what is something so big. It's the biggest stage we could compete on,
Yeah.
but there's this kind of
But, like,
mind,
not even for
like,
us. Yeah.
that you're like, oh yeah, it's cool. Like,
Yeah.
we're cool. I'm cool. Are you cool? We're cool. Let's go do
Cool,
this.
it's fine, it's fine. I
Yeah.
remember the first time I mean, my first Olympics was your second Olympics,
Mhm.
and I remember we actually met during the NBC promo. I don't know if you remember that in, like, 2011.
Yes. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember you still had your, like, really short hair then,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Who's that?" No,
I love it.
but then I remember seeing you at the Village, in the Olympics in 2012, and I was like, oh shit, like, and I think you were like, you made it, and I was like, yeah.
We made it.
Right.
Yeah.
It was so nice, but man, where was I going with that? I had a thought, and then like, okay, there it is. I remember it. So my first Olympics, when I walked out into like the actual competition arena, everything was the same because we actually had the opportunity to compete in the exact same arena in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing that was different, honestly, was like the carpeting and the fact that there were Olympic rings. But
Yes.
it's not that I was nervous, but I remember looking around. I was like, "Oh shit, the Olympic rings!"
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure we made it.
Right. But like you said, you go through this entire process of every single day making your hands sweat, making you feel those evil butterflies, like I like to call
Mhm.
them, and making you like almost shake so that when you get to that point, you're just like, yeah, okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And
It's
only in retrospect, and I feel like only in a transitional period, once we're done with that and we move on, we look back and we're just like, oh, that was a big deal.
yes. No, absolutely. And it's that's when you come back from the Olympics and you like go back to your like one bedroom apartment and the whole world's eyes were just on you, and then you like come back to your apartment and you're like, just like what did I just experience? Because I think in 2000 my Olympic experience, all three were so different. In
Yeah.
2008 I had a different coach. We had a
Mhm,
different approach, a different mindset. I
mhm,
was so focused. I don't think I looked up once, like
mhm.
it was kind of like what happened in Beijing stayed in Beijing, because like
Yeah,
I was kind of like totally disconnected,
yeah,
unfortunately.
mm,
Um, and then in London, I got to relax a little bit. We had a different way of how we were presenting ourselves, and we were given a little bit more freedom to be individuals with the coach that I had for 12 and 16, and I
mhm,
could breathe a little bit. And it was my second time around, so like I was a lot more present in 2012 and 2016, and so my eyes were open. I was looking up. I really let myself sink into opening ceremonies and like
mhm.
enjoy it, be present in it. I was playful and I was joking around. It was like, it's impossible to stay focused for 2 weeks long if you don't breathe and
Yeah,
have fun and insert joy. And that's
yeah,
so natural to who I am. That's so part of my character. So to turn those parts of you off just because you're at the Olympics doesn't make sense. And
yeah.
so, I think like to be a little bit more present and enjoy the fun things, like really take in the dining hall and see all the
Yes,
different athletes and all of
yes.
the different gear, and, enjoy like hiding in other people's like suite rooms and scaring them, like it's fun to be a part of a team of 13 and
Yeah,
have this kind of giant sleepover where we're all sharing like living space for two
yeah,
weeks. And
yeah,
it was really cool. But there's a lot of focus in it, and a lot of like, what did you do? And well, I was there for a job and I did it,
yeah,
and
yeah,
nothing was going to distract me from getting to the top of the podium. It was like, let's
absolutely.
go. Like, I'm laser focused.
Absolutely, dude. I
Yeah.
I also for the thing about the sleepover, I thought it was really another part of the Olympic Village that was like my favorite was the United States. We normally have like an entire building, and in Rio that was like very pronounced. We literally had a whole building
Yeah.
just to ourselves. And going to it was like the therapy floor. It was like the floor where like everybody goes to like get work on or
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
That was so cool too, because like you get to see athletes that you like admire, and you get to see people that you're just like, oh look, that's I loved it. I loved it. But absolutely, I felt the same way with my second Olympics because the first of all, I as gymnasts, we never walk the opening ceremony because like we compete the very next morning. And
Mhm.
so it's kind of a lame, but like kind of like a tradition for the US men. We would get dressed up in like our Olympic opening ceremonies like
As you
gear,
should. Okay.
and then we would watch it on the
In your
couch.
outfit. I mean, like, that seems so appropriate.
Right. We
I
would
love
like
that.
see I remember in London, we were like in the apartment and we could look over to the side and we can see like the fireworks and like the planes flying over. We're just like,
Yes.
but I remember right after I was done competing, I left the very next morning. So I like really couldn't enjoy the London Olympics like whatsoever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting experience that probably felt like you just ripped a Band-Aid off a little
Yeah,
bit.
it was, like, completely all work, but in 2016, similar to you, like, it was the 2nd time around. I also knew that that was gonna be, like, my last competition. I knew I was retiring, so I was enjoying everything, and I was just, like, making everything light and, like, actually taking in the whole experience. I also think it helped the fact that I mean, I was born in Cuba, so, like, being in Rio, it almost felt very at home for me. So just being able to take in all the culture and all that stuff was like it just added to the experience for sure. And then I was able to stay for the rest of the Olympics, which was just phenomenal.
Which is so awesome, and because you guys are the first week of the Olympics, and then you
Yeah,
have the second week off, or, like, I mean, you can also just do 1 event or 2 events, and then it's done. Like you
yeah,
said, you did 1 day in
exactly.
London, and then it was over,
Yeah.
which is nuts, and it's interesting because then you hear those experiences of athletes that have that kind of, like, not full
Hmm.
2 weeks. Like,
Yeah.
we start the day after the Olympic Games start, and the Olympic Games run for 2 weeks, and our tournament runs for 2 weeks. So
Right.
we are on from the time that the Olympics start, and we finish when it ends. I mean, there's
Right.
not much wiggle room. So you're just kind of on the grind. We end up playing 6 games. And I'm like, should water polo players get a gold medal for every game they win at the Olympics? Or does it really just have to? I'm like, swimmers are over here racking up all these medals,
Right?
you guys can do the same. I'm like,
Yeah.
how am I playing 6 games, getting 13 girls pulling on the same rope all
One
together,
one medal?
and 1 medal? Come
Yeah.
on.
I call it jip. I call it jip. We
I
need
call it
more.
just too. I'm like, straight up. I'm like, highest level, 6 games won. I'm
Yeah.
saying 6 gold medals would be rad.
Yeah. I
I'm
feel
sounding
like
a little greedy, but
no, but it's there's a lot of sports like that. I feel like basketball is the same way,
yeah.
right? Soccer is the same way. And these are the events that people are it's way harder because like you said, like you have to go through so many things to get that one single medal.
Yes, and you're not
Whereas
responsible just for yourself either. Like,
right,
you gotta show up and know that you're ready to go and that
right.
you're feeling right and you're doing your thing, but we have to make sure 13 girls. On the flip side of that is if I'm having the worst day I've ever had,
Yeah.
like, I'm managing and everyone else is circling around me, like, making sure the momentum's still going.
Mhm.
So, there's a lot of benefit to that.
So let me ask you something. Because for me, after I retired, I had the completely opposite experiences as you did because you were constantly with a team. I
Mm,
was constantly alone.
yes.
And so I want to know what
Whew,
your transition was like
yeah.
from, leaving that completely team environment
Mhm.
to essentially having to fend for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, I experienced some really extreme loneliness.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because I felt the low after 2008, but I was already 5 days late in starting university. I had my whole college team waiting for me, and it was like I didn't even have time to process what I had just experienced. Again, like whatever
Hmm.
happened in 2008 happened, and I can barely grab on to that experience. And then went straight into school. 2012, I felt a little bit of a down after that and a little bit of a low, but I was going to play abroad. I was still in motion. And after 2016, I knew I was going to be retiring. And, you don't feel it right away, because we're doing a lot of events where like you see 3 teammates here, you see 4 teammates there. We're all celebrating still. We're staying rather busy with all the things that come to follow after the Olympics. And then it started getting really quiet. And I realized that I had some ideas of how I wanted to move forward, what I wanted to do for work. And that didn't end up going the way that I had expected it to go. It wasn't what I had in mind. And so we were getting paid out until January, which was beautiful to get that wiggle room to
Hmm.
kind of figure it out. I was meant to start work in February and was so disappointed by kind of how it worked out in the contract that was drafted for me that I ended up saying, thank you, but no, thank you. And then shortly after that, I broke up with my boyfriend of 10 years. And so
Whoa, whoa, wait a second, wait a second.
I know, I know.
So you essentially broke up with the sport that you did for how long?
13 years at the highest level. 19 years altogether.
Okay, that 19 years separated from the one incredibly constant in your life.
That's right.
And then the other incredibly constant in your life was this incredibly long relationship that you
Yes.
had
Yes, through
that
my
you
entire, like,
yeah,
national team athletic career. I mean, we did 3 Olympic Games together, 3 seasons abroad. So, yeah, I mean, there was just so much, and then I didn't have a job. I didn't have health insurance, I didn't have an income.
of course.
I was so overwhelmed by having to make a decision on my own. I didn't wanna make any decisions, I was scared to do it. I had just come from this, like, complete embodiment of all in, complete preparation,
Plan A and only plan A.
yeah, and it was like it was so clear and you knew how to measure success and it was like, everything was just so, and I didn't have one coach on my butt. I had 3 coaches and then I had 13 teammates holding me accountable and then I
Yeah.
had an entire staff of, trainers, doctors, dentists, like, anything I needed at my fingertips. So like your resources, I mean, I'm not losing just 13 girls in a team. I'm almost losing like a 25 to 30 person squad that's making sure that I'm running at the highest level possible.
Yeah.
And then I'm losing this kind of like 6.5 hours a day, 6 days a week, like that type of like training. I mean, there's so much, like your connection to the team, your body's changing, your mindset's changing because you're not working out the way that you're working out. I'm now, broken up with my boyfriend of 10 years. They move out and the dog moves out with him. And I'm literally sitting alone for the first time in my entire life. And I'm terrified. I'm absolutely terrified. And
And then
I,
that's and that, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
go
another
ahead.
thing that I just thought about is as an athlete that works out that much, the one thing that a lot of people don't realize, and it's something that I've had to almost like daily work on, is like food intake. Food intake
Yeah,
has to, dude. We have to watch that so heavily because
yeah,
we didn't have to worry about it because
right.
we were burning so much. We were working it off so much, so we can just like.
Yes,
But now, like you said, it was like a false floor, and all of a sudden, just everything was gone.
gone,
Your
gone. And
body is so used to constant movement, and now you're just like,
yeah,
but you still have the habit of eating so much, so you have to figure out how to like, wait, stop.
no, absolutely. I mean, there's so much change all at once. And to be sitting alone for the first time, I mean, I started just like my schedule was just booked, like with social, with whatever work I could get my hands on.
Trying to fill that hole.
The last thing I wanted to do was to be alone. I was scared of it.
Of
For the
course.
first time, I was looking at myself and I had no idea who I was. I didn't know who I was without water polo. I didn't know who I was outside my relationship. I didn't know
Mhm.
who I was, I didn't know where I was going. I was so alone and was so overwhelmed. I wouldn't say lost. I just was overwhelmed and I was looking at a stranger.
Yeah.
Like, and it's crazy because I feel like when you're training the way that we trained and the goal is so specific and
Mhm.
it's get to the Olympics, we're so good at compartmentalizing, right? And there's so much, like there could be such trauma and
Mhm.
tragedy happening in our lives and we don't even take the time to address it, process it, heal from it. We
Yeah.
don't have time to unravel.
We
You
don't
can't.
have the luxury to. If we do
No.
process it, it is like like a sliver of it, and we're just like, oh, that's sad. Let's keep going. And like,
Yes, enough, yeah, enough to be like, "Okay," and then keep moving. Like, it doesn't stop because the second you stop, somebody takes your spot on the team. You lose,
absolutely.
like, and it's like, it's crazy that we've trained ourselves to do that. And so for the first time ever, I was unraveling and there was space to unravel. And this was over a few months of time. And eventually I started the process of introducing myself to myself,
Yeah.
getting to know who I am at a soul and core level, and not as an athlete, and not as a girlfriend, and not as even, a daughter. I was
Mhm.
really learning what my role was for myself in my
Yeah.
own life and
Yeah.
not how I was going to serve all of these things around me.
Mhm.
And I had to, it's like, and it was really challenging because it's almost like you're trying on jackets, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
you're trying on these identity jackets and you're like,
Yeah.
hmm, this is a little tight in the shoulder, so you throw that one off, or like this doesn't fit right, this doesn't look
Mm-hmm.
right. And so every time you try on that jacket and shed it, and you try on another one and you shed it,
It's
you're
exhausting.
experiencing these micro losses.
Yeah.
You know, like I can handle failure, I can handle like adversity challenges, but this like constant loss of team, loss of relationship, loss of identity, loss of self. And then you're like trying, you know, you're waking up every morning trying to be that warrior you know yourself to be,
Mm-hmm.
and you're doing this dance of like, who am I, and experiencing loss and loss and loss again and again. It was dark. It
Let me
was
ask you something,
dark.
because I feel like to add to that is the fact that as an athlete we are meant to deal with those minor losses here and there, but I feel like it's okay because we constantly have a structure. We know exactly, if we do lose, if you go to a match and you lose a match, you say, all right, I lost, it sucks. You go back into the gym or into the water,
Mhm.
and you have a set date of when your next thing is going to be. So no matter what, you're fine.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, whatever, I lost. It's okay. I'm going to keep working to this next thing. But now we don't have that structure. We don't have the next date to know what to work towards.
Yes.
Now it's just like we have to figure it out. And we're just like, so I feel like that's why it's even harder
Yeah.
for us to deal with these little losses, like you're saying, and I agree with you. There's a point, like I said, I started therapy at some point late last year,
Okay.
and I'm the same way. Like I'm still finding who I am, and I'm way happier now, which is interesting because when the world is in an apocalypse, I actually find myself being the happiest with who I am personally for the first time in a long time, because I have kind of rid myself of all of these outside expectations of who
Yeah.
I'm meant to be.
Yes.
And instead of I'm just actually embracing who I really am. And I feel like that's kind of what you're saying.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, you know, that takes a lot of courage. It's like a very courageous and noble road to walk to get to that place where, you know, the only opinions and expectations that are most important are your own.
Hmm.
And we're so programmed to, you know, meet the expectations of coaches and meet the
Yeah.
expectations of Team USA. And,
Hmm.
you know, there's this like constant, for me, it was this weird thing of like, don't ever feel like you're good enough, because the second that you think that you're good enough, like you're gonna get beat or someone's
Oh
you know what I
man.
mean? So you're like, you gotta pump yourself up, but like never truly fully like believe in yourself, but don't believe in yourself too much. You know what I'm
Dude,
talking
I
about.
know exactly what you're talking about, because it's this constant conflict of not wanting to disappoint somebody, but also wanting to be the best. But then
Yeah,
also don't believe that you're the best. But if you don't believe that you're the best, you're not going to be the best. So figure that out on your own. Like, and you're just like, ah,
yeah, yeah. But the second you believing you're the best, you're relaxing. And then when you relax,
yeah,
that's when you're gonna be,
yes.
but like make sure you're confident enough to like get to the top of the podium. Okay. You have all that.
You got
And
it. You got
so,
it. Good.
like,
Go for it.
also like you're not good enough, but like you're the best. So
Right. Also, what? You're 19. You're fine. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. You'll figure it out.
oh my
Yeah.
god, it's so wild. And like
Yes.
to try to manage all that, and then also the world that we lived in, you know, training, and we've gotten to travel the world. We're this is how I look at it. Like we are so overdeveloped in certain
Hmm.
areas that the normal person will never be able to create unless they're in that kind of environment, pressure cooker type of
Yep.
training that we're in. And we
Yep.
are so underdeveloped, severely underdeveloped in other areas, that we didn't have a normal childhood upbringing,
Yeah.
life. You know, like I retired at 30, and I was like, guys, I don't
Ah!
know what I'm
my
doing.
favorite
You know?
my favorite phrase of yours is one, because you actually helped me a lot at a certain point, after we saw each other at the Gold Meets Golden event,
Yeah.
and you invited me to this group, which was really amazing. The MVP group is really great, but you said something to me that you were just like, the thing is that you have to realize that we're not even 4 years out of the last Olympics, which was when we retired, which means that we are not even 4 years old in real life yet. And it's like,
Yes.
how do you expect to have all your shit together when you're a toddler in real life right now? And I
Yeah.
was just like, oh.
Totally. When you're looking at that, you've only, I mean, August, you know, we're just past August. So we're 4 years old in 1 month.
Exactly.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Look
Yeah.
back at what the work that you've done, the self work, and
Mm-hmm.
then the, exterior work. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's probably pretty impressive
Mm-hmm.
what you've been able to work through, kind of clunk through, pull yourself through. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I don't think I was even participating until a full year after Rio, maybe a year and a half. I mean, it was just
Yeah.
a lot of like battling with myself before I was
Mm-hmm.
even like could come up for my first breath, to be
Yeah.
quite honest. But yeah, I'm literally learning a whole new me.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up with learning disabilities. I have dyslexia and ADD, and that you do too.
I have ADHD.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, of course you do. I've watched you out there playing, flipping around and all that stuff. Yeah.
Of
So it's
I feel like I've said this before, but my mom earlier this year, I was like, I think I'm gonna like try and get myself to take medication for ADHD because I think it's gonna help me. And she was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I see." And I was like, because like I know I'd never been diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure I have ADHD. And she goes, "No, you have it." And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "No, I got you diagnosed when you were a kid. You have it for sure. They were gonna take medication. I just didn't want them to because I was worried you were gonna have a bad effect." And I was like, "Mom, you could have my life. It could have been so easy. What?"
Oh my gosh. No, my story goes the same. My mom, same thing. I was diagnosed with ADHD, bottle of pills, and she just poured it down the drain. She was like, I don't want to change you. Like, I love your fire. I love your wildness. And what we're
Yeah.
going to do is we're going to put you in a lifestyle that helps you manage that energy, which is how I became an Olympian. We managed it so well that it took me straight to, playing at the highest level. But
I agree.
it's and so I think like I'm glad that you never did, because how would it have changed you? How would have
I don't know, but see, now I'm at this conflict because Simone has ADHD and she does take medication. She's been taking medication and she is probably the best athlete that I've ever seen of all time.
sure.
She is she's not human. She's not human.
Yes.
Uh she's insane. So I don't know. Maybe our moms were a little bit wrong.
Maybe they missed the mark. I'm not
I
for
also think that we're close to the same age, and I think that when we were younger, science and the medication they weren't as good as they are now. So I
sure. Yeah.
feel like they were right because it probably would have affected us in a very
Yeah.
not good way.
And it was interesting because my mom was like, I'm not going to give you this pill and then send you off to school and not know how and not be able to watch you and
Yeah,
see.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it was really it was a point of conflict for her. It was really
yeah.
challenging.
Of
But
course.
I think the neatest thing is that my parents aren't athletes. I have no athletes in my family. My brothers aren't athletes. My parents aren't athletes.
Wow,
Yeah. And I'm the first to attend and graduate college in my family. So there was a lot of first for our families
wow.
with my life experience. But, I think it was interesting. I think all of it was so new, and I'm the only one in my family with learning disabilities. And so it's just like, it was a huge test run. And
Yeah.
my mom doesn't even know how to swim. If she'd fell in at a game, I'd have to like save her. And so it was like, as a little team, we would show up to each pool. My mom's like, "You got your suit, you got your Gatorade, okay, like go do what you're doing. You're doing a good job, honey."
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
an incredible testament to your mom and her character as well, because you have the opposite. You have the parents who were always athletes and were always like wanting to do something, and then they try and like force their kid to do the thing, and you could like tell.
Yes.
I know you work with kids. I've worked with kids like almost my whole life, and you could tell when there's that disconnect between them doing the sport because they actually want to do the sport, or them doing the sport because they feel that they have to do the sport.
Yes. Yeah. Ask a child why. What's
Yeah,
their why? Is
yeah.
the powerful question you can ask,
I
because
love that.
yeah, I mean, and you're with Rise Athletes right now, a company that we
Yeah.
both work for, where we mentor youth athletes. And
Mhm.
that's one of the most powerful things I can ask an athlete, because they either know exactly what their why is or they're stumped,
Mhm.
and it gets really quiet and it gets like, like, what is my why? Or it's really clear that well, I'm doing it because I want to get into college, or, and it's like, okay, but is that really what's going to get you out of bed in the morning? Is that
Right.
really what's going to get you through all those hours? Is that really, but where is it? For me, there was a genuine love of
Mhm.
water polo. I loved being in the water. I loved being social. I loved learning things at the pace that I was learning them in the
Mhm.
pool, because I wasn't able to learn that quickly in the classroom.
Yeah.
I got a lot of atta girls in the water, and a lot of you are not good enough in
Mhm.
the classroom. And so
Mhm.
it was a place that was so serving, and I could be big and loud and obnoxious and
Yeah.
use my strength and, think creatively and outside of the box. And I wasn't like shoved into this mold that school was putting me in.
Yeah.
And the water, I was just so free to
Yeah.
be. And that's it, it ended up being such a gift and so serving. But I think there's something interesting there of how almost water polo and swimming became like a lifeline, and it became where I got the feel goods, and I could
Mhm.
be something,
Mhm.
bigger than the girl who was struggling in the classroom.
Yeah.
And so it really, again, it adopted this identity of like, that's a cool place to be. And then again, without that, what are you? Are you still the
Yeah.
little girl struggling in the classroom? And
Mhm.
kind of unpacking that. And are
Ooh,
you good?
that's deep. That
Yeah.
is
Are you
deep.
good enough outside the pool to do anything, And so,
You have to try and find that same happiness, that same, like,
yes,
vigor and drive now outside of the water, and that's definitely the hardest part.
but it's been a beautiful experience and journey. And,
Yeah,
no doubt I am so capable and enough and worthy of doing so
absolutely,
many things outside the pool. And
absolutely.
that's what I'm embarking on right now.
And I feel like, you brought up Rise, and I think Rise is such a perfect company, such a perfect organization, and I think that the fact that I'm a part of it, like, I'm honestly, I'm so happy. But I feel like, especially for people like you and I, where it's almost that we've found a new purpose. We found a new way to maybe fill in any sort of gap that young athletes are having in their life, right? Like for me, I know a lot of the things that I was missing, and so whenever I try and work with any young athlete, I try and be what I felt that I was missing the most. And a lot of times they're also missing the same thing. So it's good to see them react and to see them like actually be like, "Oh, wow."
Yes.
There are a few times where they're just like, "Oh yeah, I understand because of this," and that makes me happy too because I'm like, "Oh, thank God you're working with somebody who's doing it the right way."
Yes.
But for you as well, like I feel that because we've talked about it for a while, and I just like I know your energy and I see it in your eyes when you speak about it and when you speak about working with kids, like now you have found, I feel maybe you have found that same sort of drive and that same happiness, that same little girl that was so happy in the water by helping other young athletes. I felt like that for you has been that connecting point back to, I guess, your own personal happiness.
Absolutely. You said that really well. And I think meaning and purpose is so important moving forward. I want to be meaningful in the work that I'm doing and purposeful in the work that I'm doing. And I think for me, I'm like in the business of empowerment.
Hmm.
I had a mom that basically was like, you can do anything you want to
Right.
do. And I mean, she was like a warrior. Like this, every school district knew her. Like, I was going to have my rights as a kid with learning disabilities. I was going to, get the support that I legally needed.
Yeah.
And it was just like, she was really big on teaching me how to advocate for myself. She was a big advocate for me and then taught me how to advocate for myself. So I just think like, that empowerment is so important. And I've had one or two or maybe even three heroes in my life that saw greatness in me or saw my work ethic or saw what I was capable of doing on a much bigger scale. And their little bits of, knowing and empowerment to me, I mean, I was able to run with that. And so if I can empower one kid or teach them how to advocate for themselves or teach them how to just trust in what they're doing, it's a complete success for me.
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
everyone's like, oh, you work with, I've worked with 15 different sports at this point, like rugby, rock climbing,
That's
swimming,
awesome.
ice hockey, all these cool sports. And everyone's like, oh, not just water. I'm like, I'm not coaching a sport. I'm
Yeah.
coaching a human. I'm teaching individuals how I'm empowering so that they know
Mhm.
that they can go out and tackle anything that they're facing.
Because
And I
at the end of
think,
the day,
yeah,
it doesn't really have much to do with whatever sport you're doing. It's with
right.
connecting with the human and then understanding whatever it is that they are missing, and seeing how you can help them find whatever it is that they're missing. And I feel like, believe it or not, very quietly I've been following your lead, because we talk a lot and you tell me all these things, and I really take them to heart, and I really try and apply that. Obviously, as an actor, unless you're like almost constantly working, or unless you've had some sort of success where you can actually live off of that, like you need a side hustle, you need to figure out how to
Yeah,
make money. And so for me, I was coaching, and I do that probably the most, but I have tried to apply basically what you have unknowingly taught me to help younger athletes. And I feel like it's such an important thing to understand how to connect with a person first, regardless of whatever it is that they do, whatever their background. Just connect with them first, because that is probably the truest and best way to help a person as a person first. And then their athletics or whatever it is, whatever endeavor it is that they're pursuing, will follow.
absolutely. I mean, could you imagine, picture your little 9-year-old self like sitting on a curb and then one of us coming to sit down next to you, right? Who like gets what you're working on, gets like that you're an athlete, understands your crazy energy, like, and sits down and just says like, "Hey, like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Top of mind or heart free?" Like, could you imagine like someone, I don't think, my parents always checked in. They were always supportive, but it was with
Yeah.
an agenda. Like, we got to do this, this, and this. We got to do that. Like,
Yeah.
someone literally just being of service to you to check in and see how you are doing. How
Hmm.
are you feeling without judgment,
Hmm.
without an agenda,
Hmm.
just simply to be there with you in that
Yeah.
moment and know that there's greatness in you because
Hmm.
they've had that shared experience with you. I'm like, I would have like died and gone to heaven if I had that as a kid. We didn't know what the heck we were doing, as a family with no athletes and everything for the like I it would have been so impactful to have that.
I don't know if you ever had the opportunity to meet, because I mean, obviously, I don't really know like water polo history, but was there any moment in time for you where you met somebody that was a very successful athlete, and like you looked up to them as a kid, and you met them, and even just like for a split second, just the fact that they were just like, hey, like you had that moment. Do you remember that moment?
Yeah, I think there's been quite a few like older players that were really nurturing and took me under their wing, which was always hilarious because I was always like outweighing them and totally taller than them. I was giant, like, and it was like, I'll take care of you. I'm like, thanks.
You're
Um,
like, thanks.
yeah, exactly. But I think one of my superpowers is like calling in help. Like I've
Yeah.
always been really good at asking people for help. I've always been good at asking for support because when you have learning disabilities, you've got to be comfortable enough to
Mm.
say, "Hey, this isn't working for me. I don't get this. I need a little bit of extra support to get over a few humps." And then it's like I'm running until I hit the next one and then I'm like,
Right.
hello, is anyone out there? You know what I mean? So but yeah, I think a lot of those older girls that basically allowed me to laugh and be goofy and let me be my authentic self in those kind of intense moments of training or leveling up to the next level or the
Yeah.
team national team. It was like those were huge
Yeah.
like moments for me, and I've always made sure to let those women know the impact that they've made on me and how
Mm.
special that was.
I remember there was very few moments. I was fortunate enough where I started reaching like a really high level in the sport when I was relatively young. Like I made the senior national team when I was 17, which I think it's only been me and one other person that have ever actually made it while they were 17 into the senior national team. So I had the incredible opportunity to compete with and train alongside some of the people that I was like looking up, that I like literally grew up idolizing.
Wow.
And it was insane because I remember when I was younger and I would meet them and it was like life changing almost, and even if it was just like for a conversation. Remember we would go to like junior national team camps and things like that in the gym. It was like the Olympic Training Center, and some of the Olympians would train there, and they would come out and like have conversations with us. And that was so huge to me
Mhm.
And it's still, I'm like almost finally accepting the fact that I am now in that position.
Yes, you absolutely are.
You
Yes.
know, I am in the position where I can go and like make somebody else's day just by being like, hey, you know, because of what we were talking about earlier, that it's almost like be good enough, but you're not good enough. You know, we almost don't take ourselves seriously, and we almost don't understand. Like we try and remind ourselves, like, no, hey, you're really good. You did a lot of good things. But like internally, we're just like,
Yeah, and but I want to take a minute to pause and acknowledge like you have the ability to make an impact on others and make someone's day, not because of what you've done, but simply because
right.
of who you are. Because you have done some pretty incredible things. And there's a lot of people who've done incredible things. But the way that you see people and you connect with people and you shine your light, that's what makes a difference in someone. That's what makes an impact. And so, you know, and this is kind of the place where we're at as 4 years old is like
Yeah.
you aren't amazing because of what you've accomplished. You're pretty incredible and amazing because of who you are. And you didn't accomplish, yeah, you didn't accomplish what you did. Who you are inside made you an Olympian. Being an Olympian didn't make you.
That's the probably the best compliment that I've ever received, and I probably ever will receive. So thank you so
What
much. I'm gonna
you're
go cry later about it, but that's fine. Not on camera.
no, but it's true, you know, and
I
I think
appreciate you.
we
I
gotta
believe
love
the same
ourselves
to
up.
you, by the way. I believe the same for you. And yeah, wow, thank you.
Welcome. You're deserving of it. You're welcome.
Man, I had like such a great question, and now you just made me forget about everything with that. Thank you, Kenny.
You're welcome. Take your time.
It's fine. I'll edit it out. I'll edit it out. My tears. Uh,
Um,
moving on. So
okay.
now, today, what is it that you're doing? You know, how are you? How have you dealt with this summer, and what's, I guess, what's next for Cami?
Yeah, what's next for Cami? I think okay, so if
That is
I
a loaded question. I'm so sorry.
it is a loaded question, especially when you're kind of like creating who you are. And
Exactly.
I think one of the neat things that I'm starting to learn as well is like nobody knows what they're doing. We're all trying to figure it out. Like I think we were so blessed to have such clear goals and such a clear path, and we're held by such routine and system. Like that's not normal, right? And so I'm learning like we're all out here doing kind of the best that we can, figuring out what it is. And the neat thing about it is that we aren't stuck to this mold anymore, you know, that we
Hmm.
can be creative
Hmm.
and live outside of that. So, you know, I went into outside sales in corporate, right? That was the first job that I got. I was selling fitness equipment and design concepts. Okay. And so it was fun. You know, I was like Miss Saleswoman and I was doing really well. I was killing it. And I absolutely hated it because what was missing was meaning and purpose. You
Yeah.
know, I had all of this hard earned experience, I had all of these gifts to share, and I wasn't empowering anyone. I mean, I was empowering the buyer to buy, but like that,
You're empowering the equipment more than anything. You're just like, this is so good.
I'm like, this is the best pull up bar you can ever invest in. Like, no. So, okay. I learned really quickly, you know, and it was interesting being on a corporate team and
Hmm.
figuring out what the culture is like in there and how people like, you know, I was like, whoa, this is like really off compared to what I'm used to as an athlete working
Yeah,
on a team. And so I could see a lot of holes in
for sure.
our culture and our work team. And so I was really struggling with it. And I was sitting down at dinner with my dad and I was like, I don't like this. I don't like it was against my soul and it didn't
Yeah,
feel right and it didn't
yeah.
feel family and it just didn't feel good. And I said, I'm not happy. And my dad said, quit. And it was like I needed him to say that in that moment, you know, and
You're
I'm
like,
really I'm like, well, I'm like, yeah, I am gonna quit because we're not used to quitting, right? Like we're in
100%.
and so it was like for me, it was like I had to really say it was okay that it wasn't meant for me, that I wasn't
Yeah.
I was only moving on. And that's when I decided to go full time with Rise. I had one athlete with Rise Athletes and I left my corporate job. And my goal was to get 10 athletes to get full time and have an income that I needed to survive. And I hit 12 within 2.5 weeks. And I've stayed above 15 up for the last 2.5 years.
Wow.
So I've been rocking with a really cool roster of athletes who are just kicking butt and being leaders in their own space, which I'm super proud of. But it gave me really kind of the knowing of, I'm really interested in mental health. I'm really
Mm-hmm.
interested in the mentorship and the life coaching aspect of Rise. It's allowed me to go out and pour into other cups of doing workshops and identity work. And I'm doing all kinds of really cool trainings. I'm doing Center for Counsel. So, like, how do you create safe space and help with
Yeah.
facilitation and like getting good, rich conversation going? How do you create that space for people where they feel safe and open to share? I'm doing a life coach certification. I'm doing a mindfulness and meditation certification. I've done quite a bit of work around and some courses around racism and the type
Yes,
of
Cami.
impact that it has. So I'm calling this my gypsy education right now. I'm just pulling in all the things that I'm really interested in and wanting to pour in and support to other people. And I've applied twice now. So here we are, I've failed already in these 4 years quite a bit, but I've applied twice to get a master's in social work. Because you
Wow.
become clinical and then licensed and, essentially serve as a therapist. So that to
That's
me is kind of
amazing.
the big end goal. How that will come about, I don't know. There's a reason why I'm not supposed to be in school right now. That's why I wasn't getting in.
Yeah.
But what I'd love to have is a beautiful, like, plush office with a big cozy chair and I think for me, I'm like children with learning disabilities, parents with kids who have learning
Yep.
disabilities, any
Yep.
sort of behavioral issues with our youth. Youth athletes come through, athletes going through transition. I would
Mm-hmm.
love to help us,
Yep. Yep.
coming out of sport.
Yep.
And any young professionals who are in transition themselves, really focus on transition. Like, these are kind of what I see as my target clients, and I would love just to have a gold medal level of education behind me to help serve that. So that's
Yes.
kind of big picture, and kind of what I'm doing now.
I genuinely believe that all of this will happen. I believe it for a couple reasons. One, because you have 3 Olympic medals, 2 of which are gold and one of them is silver. I have 3 also, but it's 1 bronze and 2 silver.
I like
uh
I like it. Diversity here.
But I think that the main reason why I believe that all of these things are going to happen is because obviously you understand the difference between properly structured goal setting, which is something that I also try. I feel like we both try and teach young athletes that it's not just about like, I want to go to the Olympics, I want to have this big plush office. It's about understanding that to get to the second floor, you have to build a staircase, and you know how to build the staircase. And so I, without a shadow of a doubt, I believe that all of these things are going to happen to you, and it's
Thanks,
just a matter of time. And
thanks for that.
Cami, thank you so much for being a part of this. This has been amazing. This is probably going to be my favorite episode. I'm not going to say that just in case I make somebody else mad, but it's my favorite.
I
Thank
so
you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for your time. It's always good when I can sit down with you and get some good face to face. And I'll take a podcast to do it.
Yes. Hopefully I can move back to LA pretty soon. Hopefully the world, it stops being crazy, at some point. Please God. But I'll definitely keep you updated. Thank you again. You're amazing. Let's wrap this episode up by saying thanks again for being on episode 10 of Out of Bounds. Cami, Craig, the phenom. You're the best. I'll talk to you guys later. Let's roll some credits.